Hello, and welcome back to yet another college football video. I'm trying to rush to get these shits out before kickoff starts on the 24th. Um, shit. I have this video, I have the next video. Maybe I'll upload one on the 24th. I don't know. I gotta figure this out. But anyways, we are talking about the most overrated teams in the country, in my opinion. Um, the way I did this now, listen up. This might be a little advanced for some of y'all. I took five rankings. I added them together. I divided them by five to get what's this thing that's called the mean or the average. And then I compared that for each team to my personal rankings of that team. And I found which teams, according to my personal opinion, of course, were the most overrated and underrated teams in the country. Again, according to my personal rankings, which are, if I do say so myself, the most accurate in the country. So, with that being said, let's hop right into this, man. Thank y'all for watching, and let's get started. I'll start off by showing y'all a list of my updated rankings. I haven't actually, it's been like a while since my last way too early top 30, so I hadn't really adjusted them in a while. And there were a few movements. Miami and Notre Dame jumped ahead of Alabama. I think Tennessee moved above Michigan. I think Kansas went a little higher. I think NC State went a little higher. I think Oklahoma moved up. Florida State definitely moved down. Utah might have moved down. Um, I dropped Louisville. If you didn't know, Louisville, I dropped like three spots, I think, because their star receiver, I think it's like Colin Lacey, he broke his collarbone, so he'll be out like the first 2 months of the season, which is massive. He's probably the most important player on their whole team, if I'm being honest with you. So that's a massive loss for Louisville. So I dropped them a few spots. And I think North Carolina jumped in there. They weren't there before. So yeah, man, that's my top 30. I gotta throw Colorado in there. If they beat Nebraska week 2, then it's okay for me to have Colorado in my top 30. All right. So that now you know what my personal list is. Now let's get into the teams which are rated much higher according to other people than they're rated on my personal list. Starting off with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Listen, this is the problem I have with people who rank Alabama so highly is that you are taking into account the past, right? And I have no problem in considering somebody's like body of work, right? When like Alabama, obviously, in previous years, I'll even admit I went against them because I didn't think their previous history mattered that much, and I was proven deathly wrong last. Alabama was one of the biggest teams I was wrong about last season. I said they were overrated. I said their roster sucked, and their roster still sucks. It's actually worse than it was last year. But now they don't have the greatest coach in college football history to make up for that. Now, the new coach they brought in, a very good coach. I'm not going to doubt it's probably one of, if not the best coach they could have hired. With that being said, anything that comes after the greatest of all time is a major downgrade. And when you have a major downgrade at head coach with a bad roster, I don't see a world where you could put Alabama top five. And I really struggled to put them top nine. It's just what it comes down to is do I think they could beat teams like Penn State on a neutral field? Yes, because there's not that many teams after them that's that good. So I still am giving them a little bit of respect. Like I really don't think they're the ninth best roster in football or in the country, I should say. But I just think they're more physical. I think a lot of their players are more experienced than some of these other teams that I have like from 10 to 15, right? But but I do think Alabama is being severely overrated. Some people even have Alabama ahead of teams like Ole Miss. Now I know they beat Ole Miss last year, but that was in Alabama. That was in Tuscaloosa. Let's get that straight. And if you just compare rosters, it is not close. Ole Miss is the better roster by a mile, and they have the more proven head coach. And they have the more proven head coach in Lane Kiffin compared to Kalen DeBoer. I know Kalen DeBoer made the playoff, made the college football national championship, but I don't see a world where Alabama is ahead of a team like Ole Miss. Now let's get into their roster a little bit. Let's take a look at what they're bringing to the table necessarily. I'll be perfectly honest with you. My biggest problem with Alabama the last 2 years has been, and even you could say in Bryce Young's final year, has been just a complete fall off, a massive decline in wide receiver and running back talent. Now, in Bryce Young's final year, they had Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the better players in the country, right? Since then, though, last year and this year, they don't have NFL caliber running backs. Think about that. Think of you could make a whole fucking list, a top 10 of first, second, third round running backs that Alabama has put into the NFL and have done very well. They don't have that. They didn't have that last year. They don't have that this year. And the wide receiver core, even Bryce Young's. So this is 3 straight years where Alabama wide receiver U right up there with Ohio State and LSU, right after they just put John Mechie and Jamison Williams in the NFL. No receivers. The last 3 years, the only receiver on this on the in the Alabama program that's been drafted top 100, I think, the last 3 years is Jermaine Burton, and they didn't even recruit. He came from Georgia. So I don't know what happened in Nick Saban's final years of recruiting, but they missed on so many guys, man. Like their wide receiver room is embarrassingly bad. If you told somebody 5 years ago that Alabama's best running back or receiver on the entire roster was Washington's wide receiver four from the previous year, they'd think you're fucking high on bath salts or something. But that's reality. Jeremy Bernard is the number one weapon on Alabama's roster, and he was Washington's wide receiver four last year. That's embarrassing. And that's no disrespect to Jeremy Bernard. I'm sure he'll have a good year or whatever. But it's like, bro, that's the standard now. The standard has just slipped so fucking far. 5 years ago, Alabama would have had multiple first and second round receivers and multiple first, second round running backs. They have none on the entire roster. It's embarrassingly bad. And people aren't even when they talk about Alabama, they don't mention that. Nobody mentions how bad their skill positions are now. And on top of that, their offensive line was bad last year. Their offensive line was a joke the first 2 months of the season last year. They pulled it together late in the season, but they fell apart against Michigan. Understandably, Michigan's a great, but still, it's like, why are we giving Alabama so much credit? The only player on Alabama's entire offense that gives them any sort of credibility is Jalen Milroe, which, by the way, makes no fucking sense why he's one of the most hated players in the country when he is literally putting the entire Alabama program on his back. If you replace Jalen Milroe with just a middle of the pack quarterback, the number 50 something ranked guy in the country, if you replace Jalen Milroe with the 50th best quarterback in the country, whoever you think that is, give him DJU. Alabama's not in my top 20. Wholeheartedly believe that. I think they'd suck offensively if they had a guy like DJU in there instead of Jalen Milroe, because that's just how good Jalen Milroe is. He carries this offense on his back, and even defensively. I'll be honest with you. I only know one player on this entire defense, and you can call, sorry, two players on this entire three. Okay, the more I look at it now, I'm recognizing more guys. I can name three starters on this defense. You can call me a casual, you can call me whatever, but I mean, guys, if you are a hardcore football fan, look at this defense and tell me it's even comparable. And on top of that, losing Nick Saban, everybody with a brain understands Alabama's defensive standard is not going to be on the same level it was in years past. I think we can all agree on that. So we talk about a bad offense on paper with a regressing defense. How the hell are they top five? I'll tell you why. It's Jalen Milroe. It's just Jalen Milroe. That's the only thing keeping them that's the only thing keeping them in my top 10. But man, this is not a good roster, bro. And I think they're going to disappoint. And everybody's going to be like, oh, what happened? Nobody saw this coming. I did. Me. Let's talk about what they did last year. Look at the numbers, bro. Just look at the numbers, bro. Offensively, they were mid. One of the worst offensive lines in the country. And I'll give you listen, I'll give credit where credit is due. Jalen Milroe, he ran into a lot of sacks. He tried to extend a lot of plays, but I mean, he kind of had to. The man kind of, it's not like he was throwing to all pro caliber receivers here. I mean, people weren't open most of the time. So he had to try and extend plays. He was responsible for most of their offense last season, understandably. But man, not a great offense. The defense was very good. The defense was top 10, top 12 in the country, most likely. They were top 50 in every category, top 45, actually. They were top 20 in 3 out of 6 categories. But I expect them to get worse across the board defensively. I think every single one of these rankings right here will be worse next season. So it's like, man, I just don't see it, bro. I wholeheartedly do not believe Alabama's a top 5, 6, 7, 8 team in the country, bro. And I really don't even think they're top. I have them at 9. I don't feel this is a top 9 roster in the country at all, but I just have so much less confidence in some of these teams I have below them, like Penn State. So, man, bro, yeah, I really think Alabama's going to have a disappointing year. I don't think they're that good at all. And let's take a look at what they did last year, right? Obviously, week 2 lost to Texas at home. The USF game was a joke and embarrassment, but they did not have Jalen Milroe. And then they rattled off their amazing win streak, their amazing, legendary 10-game win streak, or 11, I should say, um, which resulted, by the way, in a win over Georgia, a win over Tennessee, a win over LSU. You beat A&M, you beat Ole Miss. It was an amazing, legendary win streak. Nick Saban went out with one of his best seasons ever, and you ran into Michigan, who may have cheated. To be honest with you, I mean, it was a very close game. They almost beat Michigan, so they went, what's that, 11-2, 12-2 last year. I look at their schedule next year, man. I see losses against Georgia. I see losses on the road at Tennessee, back to back, at home against Missouri. I think LSU and Oklahoma are going to be very tough games. I think Auburn will be a tough game. At Wisconsin could be a tough game. I don't see a world where they lose less than 3 games next year. Wholeheartedly, I don't see that. So yeah, Alabama, uh, it's not looking good. It's not looking good, and there's no way on God's green earth they're a top 5 team. Moving on, though, we have Michigan. I have Michigan at number 12. The national media, whatever, have them around number 8, and it varies. Honestly, it varies by a very wide margin. Um, some people have them at like 10, 11. Some people have them at like 6, 7. So it's like it's very different. Some people have of opinions of Michigan, but they are significantly overrated, in my opinion. And let's get into why. Obviously, nobody's going to debate the fact they were the best defense in the country last year, maybe the best defense I've ever seen. Um, but even last year, their offense was middle of the pack, guys. They were best last year at not turning it over, okay, scoring in short field situations when their defense gives them the ball in an advantageous situation, not giving up pressure because they didn't throw the ball that much. I mean, they were the 81st best passing attack in the country, which is understandable. I mean, they had a handoff specialist at quarterback. They had a great run game. But their great run game was literally just mid. I mean, it was 54th in the country. Now, a lot of that was because they didn't have as much space to run. I'm sure if they had, their field position was 15 yards less, they would have got an extra 10, 12 yards of rushing per game. So I think that's a little bit off. But I mean, they had a historically great defense to carry a lackluster offense. But the problem is they lost the most players, I think, ever to like graduating or like leaving to the draft. So they took the biggest hit to their roster of any team in college football history. And a lot of these players from this mid offense are gone, a lot of the best players. So it's like, don't get me wrong. Let's take a look at this defense. I still expect this defense to be top 5. I mean, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Derek Moore. I still expect this defense to be top 5, if not top 3. But this offense, bro, this is where I have my issues with Michigan. They have a bad offense, like objectively bad. And they don't. Let me tell you this: they do not have a Jalen Milroe to carry this offense. They only bring in one transfer player, which they should have brought in way more, in my opinion. Half this offense should be transfers, really. I mean, it's not good enough. It really is just not good enough. They lost several offensive linemen. Uh, their top 2 receivers, I think, are gone. Best running back, obviously. Quarterback gone. And this new quarterback, this Orgy guy, I think he's going to be terrible. I don't think he's going to finish the season. Um, they're going to have to just try and rely on their run game. I don't think they're going to have. They were the 81st best pass attack in the country last year. I don't think they're going to be top 100 this year. And if we're talking about a team, right, that's ranked in the top 10 that doesn't have a top 100 pass game in the country, how can you be top 10? It's just like, come on, bro. You're just Air Force on steroids, basically, is Michigan. So again, an amazing defense, but they will not be able to carry this offense like they did last year's offense. Donovan Edwards is the only player on this offense that's worth a damn, maybe along with like Colston Loveland. And unless Donovan Edwards, against all odds, has like 1,500 yards from scrimmage and 15 plus touchdowns, which by the way, Donovan, which is a massively overrated player. He's had one good year in his entire college football career, and people act like he's the best running back in the country. But I digress. I don't think Donovan Edwards is going to be doing all that. So yeah, this is a bad offense with a great defense. No way on earth they're top 10. I had them at 12, and they took a massive decline. Not even to mention, by the way, losing one of the best coaches in the country. I haven't even talked about that, but the interim coach went 6-0 last year, so I guess I'll give him a pass. He beat Penn State and Ohio State, so okay, I guess I'll give him a pass for that. So yeah, man, this is just a bad offense. Really, one of the worst offenses of any team in the country. I mean, I think they're like a bottom 25 offense in the country. So yeah, they suck. Moving on. Oh, by the way, this is what they did. This doesn't even really matter though. Lost to Texas week 2, so they are going to be out of the top 10 once they lose Texas at least. Um, at Washington should be tough. Lost to Oregon, absolutely, and I think they lose to Ohio State. So 9-3, regular season, same as Alabama. I don't think they finish in the top 15 probably. So yeah, that's how I feel about Michigan. Next, we have Clemson. This is just funny. This is just so funny to me because it's the exact same thing that happened last year. Clemson came out ranked top 10. I said they were massively overrated. They get blown out by Duke. By Duke. In week 1, they drop out of the top. I think they dropped out of the rankings once they got blown out by Duke. So people quickly realized their mistake last year, and everything was fine. Everything was peachy. Clemson was scratching and clawing to get back in the top 20. I don't think they ever did. So it's like, okay, good. We learned our lesson last year. Not we. I knew Clemson sucked. The media learned their lesson last year with Clemson, but here they come doing the same shit, ranking them in the top 15. Now, I will say this. There is a very vast difference with how the AP and the coaches poll views Clemson because, of course, those polls, it's just so stupid. They look at what you did over the last 5 years and rather how good your actual team is, which is what, rankings should be about. But they look at your past and what you've done rather than what you are right now. And I took two like people like YouTube channels like Joel Klatt and this guy I watch, Uncle Lou. He has like 60-something thousand subscribers. Those two viewed Clemson much more harshly than the AP poll and the coaches poll and all that, which I think makes sense because actual people are more grounded and more realistic than the fucking robots they have making these polls in college football. So very vast opinions on Clemson, but they are significantly overrated. And people just don't learn their lesson. I mean, they showed you that they were frauds last year and they didn't get any better. You know why they didn't get any better? Because they lost a few players to the NFL. And oh, by the way, they don't use the transfer portal. So they can't get better quickly. It has to be a gradual process through strictly recruiting. They can't get better. And by the way, it's like, I don't think Dabo Swinney's going to be here for more than 2. I think he's going to retire in a year or two, like a mutual, like push him out the door kind of situation. Like, because man, he is running Clemson into the ground. They were what 8-5 last year, or whatever, or 9-4, whatever they were. It was bad. It was embarrassingly bad. They were losing to teams they shouldn't have any business losing to. And let's just get into it, man. This offense, bro. What is this offense, bro? They were not top 40 in anything, and they're supposed to have a great quarterback, but I don't even blame him. His receivers suck, and he has a bad O line. So I don't even blame this Cade Klubnik guy, 5-star quarterback, whatever. He doesn't have a lot to work with. I think he should have transferred, to be honest with you. I really think he should have transferred and gave himself a shot at the NFL because as it stands, this poor guy, he has no shot at the NFL. Playing with receivers like this and a head coach that won't change. Their running game was the best part of their team, but guess what? They lost their best running back, the NFL. So now they went from a very good 1-2 punch at running back to a maybe a 1 punch if they're lucky. I don't think he's going to carry this offense on his back by any means. The defense, absolutely. I will say this: I was wrong about Clemson's defense. I said I was like, they've been a top defense for so long. I think this is the year they fall off. I was wrong. They were a top 10 defense in the country. They took the ball away as more than anybody else in the country. They saved this Clemson team. Without this defense, Clemson loses 6 or 7 games last year, and that's a fact. Okay, this defense put the team on its back, but I just don't think it's going to be the same. They lost Nate Wiggins. They lost a few other guys. Jeremiah Trotter, for example. This defense is not going to be the same. They cannot replace the talent that they lose because by the way, they have guys transferring out. Make no mistake, they had a guy transfer out to like Texas, I think, a safety. They have guys leaving because they realize how shitty it is. But the problem is, so you lose guys to the NFL. You lose your best players to the NFL. You lose other talented players via the transfer portal. You bring nobody in. through the transfer portal. Your only way to get talent is by signing high school guys, which let me break the news to you. Clemson is not signing any high schoolers that's going to change their fortunes in year one. So Clemson is just, they consistently now are doing this. They're just doing this year after year after year, and people still rank them in the top 15. I struggled to put them in my top 25. I really did struggle. If Clemson played Colorado at Colorado, I might pick Colorado. I might. I really might. Let's get into the roster though, and why I think, it's just the receiver core for Clemson. This is basically what I've been talking about with Alabama. If it was stretched instead of 3 years to like 10 years. Clemson used to produce so many talented wide receivers, and it's been so long since they've done it. It's like they went from the top to now just consistently being known for not having receiver talent. It's kind of crazy. Phil Maffa is the running back I was talking about. Like, but yeah, he's just not enough. He's a good running back. He probably will go to the NFL maybe fifth, sixth, seventh round or whatever. He'll probably break like 1,200 yards from scrimmage, but he's just not enough. Not enough to do it on his own. Cade Klubnik, I truly hope he transfers after this year, because as it stands, he has a 0% chance of making the NFL as the Clemson starting quarterback. Offensive line, it's whatever. Wasn't good last year. I don't think it'll be good next year. And then defensively, I mean, man, it's so sad. You don't recognize hardly anybody from 2 years ago. The only guys I recognize on this defense are Barrett Carter, who's a great player, probably will go to the NFL, and TJ Parker. I don't even know if I recognize TJ Parker. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody. The only guy I really recognize for sure is Barrett Carter. So I don't think I said it last year. I'll say it this year. There's no way Clemson's defense is top 20. So I think they're going to get worse defensively. I think they're still going to suck offensively. The tight end Brenning Stool is the best receiver on this team. It's sad, bro. It is sad. I'll say it is very sad what's happening to Clemson, because their fan base is basically being held hostage by a head coach that refuses to make the team better. Um, so yeah, man, it's a sad situation, but it's a situation that needs to happen. People like this need to see what happens when you refuse to adapt. When you're stuck in the mud, when you're a dinosaur, you look like what Clemson looks like now, which is just behind the times, not good enough, struggling to keep their head above water, and no shot on planet Earth. They're a top 20 team in the country. This is what I mean, guys, come on. When would we have thought Clemson loses to NC State? When would we have thought Clemson loses to Miami in the the 2020s? Blown out by Duke. Lost of Clemson just showed you how big of a step back they took. They beat Notre Dame. That shocked me. I was not seeing that coming at all. But still, man, that was their only big win. I mean, they played. This is the thing about Clemson. Clemson played 6 teams that were ranked consistently throughout the year. They went 2-4 against those teams. That just goes to show you, bro. They're not good enough. They only played one team that hung around the top 10. That was Notre Dame. They beat them, but it's like, or Florida State. I guess they lost to Florida State as well. But it's like, bro, they're just not good enough anymore. They can't keep up with even the rest of the ACC teams. Guys, Clemson went, what is it? They had 1, 2, 3, 4. They went 4-4 in the ACC. Clemson went 4. They went 500 in the worst Power 5 conference last year. Just take that in for a second, guys. Think about that for a sec. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassingly bad for Clemson. It is what it is, though. I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad at all. But it's like, I feel bad that people can't recognize this. It's like, and by the way, in those 4 losses, their offense was pathetic. Their offense was just pathetic in those 4 losses. It's easy to beat up on Charleston Southern and FAU and Georgia Tech, but when you play good teams, your offense disappears because it's not a great offense. It's not a good offense. So yeah, man, it's so easy. It's so easy to see what Clemson is, but people are still just ignoring it for some reason. After that, I have FSU. FSU is a team that I'm consistently feeling worse and worse about as the offseason continues. I don't think they're going to lose week 1 at Georgia Tech. I think they're going to get the job done there. But man, they lost so much talent. Like, all of their best players left. They kept like 5% of their top tier guys from last year, bro. It's sad. It's sad, bro. It's like, They failed the mission, and everybody quit on them. And there's just not enough left, bro. There's not enough left for me to consider them a top 15 team. And people consider them a top 10 team. I don't know how that's possible. Some people have like Florida State above teams like Missouri. Missouri would smoke FSU by 30 most likely. But some people have FSU over Missouri. Um, but man, it's just such a stark. I don't know why. I don't understand the thought process by putting FSU in your top 10. Let's talk about what they were last year. Keep in mind, guys, FSU didn't really excel at anything. They didn't turn the ball over a lot, which was very good, and they had a very good pass rush, which obviously they produced multiple guys in the first round of the draft, right? Obviously, but they lost those guys. They lost the quarterback that didn't turn the ball over. They lost both the receivers that made them so good. They lost the running back that helped them be over 150 rushing yards a game. Like they lost multiple DBs that held them under 180 passing yards allowed per game. So it's kind of you can't even use these stats to judge the team. But it's like even if you do use these stats, they weren't a top 50 offense in terms of yards per game. They weren't a top tier defense in terms of rushing yards allowed. That's only going to get worse. They didn't take the ball away that much with all those star players. That's not going to get much better. Like they weren't top 25 in yards allowed per game. They were very well rounded. They had players on every level, right? But that's not the case anymore. They all left. They all left. So what do they have left if you're FSU? The quarterback, I think everybody knows what DJ is at this point. He's around the 50th or 60th best quarterback in the country. If he played in the MAC or the AAC or the Sun Belt, he'd look like a very good player. But he's played in multiple different Power Five conferences, and he has not looked that good. He really has not looked good anywhere he's been. This is his third stop. If he was a good quarterback, this would not be his third stop. This wouldn't be his second stop. He travels wherever he can. That'll take him pretty much. And Florida State, they need a quarterback, so I guess he's the guy. But yeah, it's just not. He's not good enough. The running back room. They bring in Roydale Williams to replace Benson, but it's not good enough. Lawrence Tafili will be the RB1. Maybe they'll crack 150 rushing yards a game again, but I doubt it, to be honest with you. I just don't think their offensive line's that good. I don't love the running back room. What I do love about their offensive line is it looks like everybody's a senior, which is nice. Um, the receiver room, such a fall off, such a fall from grace here. Multiple transfers. One of them's a freshman. Ja'Kai Douglas, the only returning starter from last year. Poitier is still there, but it's like, man, it's not like DJ's going to make use of him. It's not like DJ's going to throw for like over 3,000 yards next season. So it doesn't even really matter. Defensively, you bring back a couple big players. You bring back Patrick Payton. You bring back Ventrell Cypress. You bring in Marvin Jones from Georgia. I don't think they'll be a bad defense. I think they'll be solid. They'll be solid. I think they'll be a solid offense. But we're talking about a team that's like above average on both sides of the ball. I would say average offense, actually, above average or average offense, good defense. How is that top 10? How the fuck is that top 10? How? And that's the problem with the AP poll. It takes way in too much consideration last year. But what they don't recognize is through the transfer portal and through the draft, teams change so fucking quickly. You can't look at what they were last year. They fell off a cliff. They fell off a cliff. There's no way they're top 10. So that's my problem. That's my problem with this. Obviously, they were great last year. I have them losing to Memphis at home. I think they will lose to Duke. I think they'll lose to Miami and Notre Dame. So I have them. This is wrong actually. I have them going 8-4 regular season, winning a bowl game maybe if they're lucky. So 9-4 next year. They could be 8-5. I could absolutely see a world where Florida State's 8-5 next year. So keep that in mind. Florida State next year, they have a tough schedule, bro. Memphis, SMU, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Duke, Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Florida. They could lose all those games. They won't. But like, bro, they could lose 6 of those games next year. So keep an eye out on Florida State, bro. They are not going to be that good next year. After that, we have Utah. This is interesting because I can understand, as opposed to the other teams we've talked about so far, I can understand why Utah is being ranked so highly, but I just cannot put them that high because they sucked. So this is the opposite of what the AP poll has been doing. They didn't take into account what they were last year because they sucked. They were terrible. They went like 7-5 or 7-6 last year, I think, or 8-5 maybe. They had a lot of losses last year. They were not a good team last year, but it's because They had so many injuries, right? Namely at quarterback. They missed their star quarterback, Cam Rising, the whole year. He was gone, and it hurt the whole team. But let's get into it here. So I don't even think I need to show you the stats. I think everybody knows how terrible Utah was offensively last year. They were absolutely, it was a joke. It was hard to watch. But defensively, they were still very good. They were a very good defense last year, but they lost a couple big time players. So I don't know if they're going to be able to recreate that. Um, let's take a look. If we take a look at the depth chart, right? You got Cam Rising coming back. You got two running backs who should be able to help them be a good run game. Brandon Keith, the tight end, that guy's like 28. He's hurt every single year, so he keeps getting medical red shirts. I really do not love their receiver core. But if Cam Rising is back at 100%, you got a guy like Dorian Singer coming in, who was such a good player at Arizona. You got a guy like Money Parks, who could be such a good deep threat. They could have a good receiver core. They could have a good offense. But it's so many question marks, man. Is Dorian, can he regain his form from 2 years ago? Is Brian Keithy finally going to stay healthy? Is their running back room going to produce unlike they did last year? Is Cam Rising going to be 90% of what he was a few years ago? So it's like, man, I just don't know. It's too many question marks for me to just assume everything's going to work out for Utah and put them in my top 15. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. And defensively, I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think they lost most of their best players. And moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, I think they'll look worse. I think they will look worse than they did last year. Um, so it's just I just I'm just not high on Utah as compared to most of these other people, which is sad. I understand why you are. It would be a very good feel good story if Rising bounced back and they won the Big 12 and all that, but I just don't see that happening, man. If we take a look at what they were last year, I mean, obviously, guys, they lost to they lost to Northwestern, 7 of 14. They put up less than 10 points 3 times last year. They only broke 30. Actually, they broke 30 a few times, actually. They broke 34 times, but like, bro, they sucked last year. They sucked last year. And next year, it's not easy. They go on their back-to-back games right there at or Oklahoma State, against Arizona, at Colorado, at UCF. They could lose all those games, bro. They really could. I think they're going to lose 3 in the regular season, 9-3 for Utah, maybe 10 with a bowl game. But man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough for Utah next year. Moving on, though, we have Kansas State, another Big 12 team. This is one where I really just don't get it. I think maybe like because it's such a wide gap between where I think they are, and I don't understand why they're a top 15 team, and I don't understand why I have them so low. It's like maybe I'm tripping here. I don't. It's like 20. I have them outside my top 25, and other people have them in the top 15. What's going on? I don't get this is just a confusing one for me. How do people have them so highly? I'm just not seeing it. If we take a look at what they were last year, they were a really good offense last year. They were a really good offense. The problem is that they lost their quarterback. Say what you want about Will Howard. He was good. He was good in the Big 12, right? He was good in the Big 12. He helped this offense get to where it was, but they lost him. So how much do I take into account what they were last year? They lost their tight end. They lost their quarterback. They lost their tight end, and they lost their RB2. All of those guys gone. And defensively, they were middle of the pack. So I can't hang my hat on the defense being good again because they weren't good in the first place. So I have to assume that the offense is still going to be at a top 15, top 20 level, but I can't do that because there's too much change. If we take a look at the depth chart, I think this is what it is. People are extremely high on the new quarterback, Avery Johnson. I don't know why. I have not seen anything from the guy that would just make me drop all. I don't see what everybody else sees in Avery Johnson. A few things I do like. Their offensive line is all seniors, besides the center, actually. 4 out of 5 seniors on the offensive line. I like that. I like their running back room. DJ Giddens is one of my favorite players in the country. He's an absolute beast. DJ Giddens has had over 1,500 yards last year. I think he had like 15 touchdowns as well. He's an absolute beast. He could potentially just carry this offense on his back and have close to 2,000 yards next season.
He's a monster. Dylan Edwards out of the transfer portal. They have a great running back room. I like that a lot. But the wide receiver room, it's the biggest question mark on this offense for me. Dante Cephas, we saw him last year at Penn State. He was bad. Keegan Johnson, we saw him last year on Kansas State. He was not good. Jace Brown, as a freshman, had like 400 yards. That's the best thing they got going for them on their offense in terms of their receiver core. So it's like their weapons in terms of through the air are massive question marks and not big question marks either. It's like, is this guy going to be bad or average? Like that's what we're asking in terms of their receivers. Their quarterback, so he doesn't have a lot to work with there. I think they should be able to run the ball very effectively, but I don't think this is a top 20 offense in the country at all. And then defensively, I said it already. I mean, I can name a couple guys: Jacob Parrish, Austin Moore, Brennan Mott. That's it. That's it. And it's not like those guys are NFL players. They lost their number one cornerback. They lost their number one pass rusher. So they go from, you had an average defense who lost its two best players. I don't see it. I do not buy the Kansas State hype at all. Then I'm not changing my opinion on this because just because other people rate them so strangely highly, I'm not budging. I'm not conceding the fact that maybe I was wrong. No, I'm standing firm on my doubt of Kansas State. And by the way, they lost 4 games last year. By the way, the three best teams they played, right? Oklahoma State, Missouri, Texas, they lost them all. All 3 times they faced superior competition, they lost. How is that a top 15 team? They beat a weak Kansas team without Jalen Daniels. They beat NC State in the bowl game. Okay, that's fine. They had a very good back-to-back stretch there against TCU and Houston. They looked like an amazing team right there. But that's the thing, right? They looked great against everybody except good competition. Baylor, Houston, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, Troy, whatever the hell that top team is, they blew them all out. But Missouri, Oklahoma State, Texas, Kansas, Iowa State, NC State, all of those were close games or they lost. Now, they didn't get blown out all last year, which I like. But they're just not good enough, bro. They're not good enough for me to consider them one of these best teams. And if you look at their games next year, at Tulane, that's tough for them. Arizona at home, that's a loss probably. Oklahoma State at home, that's a loss probably. At Colorado, that's tough for them. Versus Kansas, that's a loss probably. They have a lot of tough games on the road at Iowa State. They lost last year, so I think Kansas State loses at least 3 regular season games next year. I don't think there's any way that they go, 10 wins, 10-2, nothing like that. I don't think they make it to the Big 12 championship game, and there's no way they're a top 15 team. Now these last two teams, I didn't even have in my top 30, so I can't even compare where I would have had them to where the AP poll has them or whatever. They weren't even in my top 30, so there's no way in hell in my mind they should be even close to top 25. So we're going to start off with USC. These are pretty much going to be rants here at the end because I don't see a fucking planet in the galaxy where USC could possibly be top 25. They showed us last year how bad they were, how weak they were on both lines of scrimmage. USC had the best quarterback in the country and was a bad team. They lost the best quarterback in the country, and you're telling me they're top 25. Just think about that, bro. Does that make any sense to you? How could a bad team lose its best player and get better? Just use your head, bro. There's no fucking way USC is top 25. Let's just get into this. They were obviously a great offense. You know why they're not going to be a great offense next year? Because they lost the country's best quarterback. They lost Brennan Rice. They lost Taj Washington. They lost their number one running back, Marshawn Lloyd. Is that enough for you? You lose your wide receiver 1, 2, running back 1, and quarterback 1. Maybe, just maybe, you won't be as good of an offense. That's what I think. And by the way, they already couldn't run the ball. Let's get that straight. Marshawn Lloyd was a good running back. They already couldn't run the ball. They already couldn't protect the quarterback. Defensively, I mean, it's USC. We know they're gonna suck defensively, right? And people are trying to hype up the new defensive coordinator. Guys, listen. Even if this new defensive coordinator is a miracle worker, okay, even if he is a magic man who can just snap his fingers and make them a good defense, they're not going to be top 10. They're not going to be top 30. They're probably not going to be top 50. If he's a miracle worker, they'll be a middle of the pack defense next year. Okay? and they won't be anywhere close to the third best scoring offense next year. They won't be anywhere close to a top 5 passing offense. By the way, they're in the Big Ten. Do you guys realize that every single conference game USC plays next year, they are going to lose in the trenches? They are going to lose the line of scrimmage battle with every single Big Ten team they play next year. They're also going to do it against, I don't know, LSU and Notre Dame. USC has like 4 or 5 losses just built into their schedule. Why would you even try and pretend like they're going to be good next year? Like, I almost want to just get into their schedule real quick, but take a look at the roster here. Zachariah Branch, good player. Their wide receivers, their top 4 wide receivers, have all only played 1 season. They have no experienced wide receivers besides Kyle Ford. He comes back. He's a senior, I guess. But offensive line, it was bad last year. It'll be bad next year. Lake McCree, I guess he's a good tight end. They bring in Jaquavius Marks from Mississippi State to be the running back. They're still not going to be able to run the ball very good, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be a good running team at all next year. They might not even be top 100. Miller Moss, the quarterback. This just blows my mind. People think, in order to think USC is a top 25 team, you have to believe that Miller Moss will be as good next year as Caleb Williams was last year. You cannot do that. If you're a sensible person, if you have any self respect, you cannot say that Miller Moss will be as good next year as Caleb Williams was last. You just can't do it. If you do it, I can't take you seriously. So that's a fact. They will have a downgrade at quarterback play. It is a fact they will have a worse wide receiver room than they did last year. It is a fact they will have a worse run game than they did last year. Like, this is an average offense I'm looking at. When you consider the defense they'll be playing in the Big Ten, they're going to get fucked. They're going to get straight fucked in the Big Ten. Defensively, they have what, 5 new starters via the transfer portal? They probably needed more than that. You probably needed more than that. They're not a good defense. I don't think they're going to be a good defense. They suck defensively, actually. So, yeah, we're looking at an average offense with a terrible defense who's going to get killed in the line of scrimmage every conference game they play. There's no way on earth USC's a top whatever team. Guys, just take a look at USC's schedule, bro. How many games did they give up 30 plus? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in a row they gave up 30 plus. Guys, they were a great offense last year. The second half of the Colorado game, their season fell off the fucking right. They fell off the hinges. Every single game after the first half of the Colorado game, their defense just quit. The rest of the season, their defense quit. They gave up. I mean, it was embarrassing. And their offense was still producing. They tried. They got killed against Notre Dame and UCLA and Oregon shut them down pretty much. But guys, it's like they went to life and death with Cal. They needed triple overtime to beat Arizona at home. Like, God, they had to fight off Colorado. Like, guys, come on. I think sensible people realize how bad USC is, but it's like, bro, they suck. They just suck, bro. I can't take the top 25 shit seriously. And then this is just a joke here. This is just a, like I'll be laughing a lot when talking about this shit. I'm disgusted personally that anybody with a brain can put Iowa in their top 40. But it's like, bro, let's get into it, I guess. I mean, what should I talk about first? Do I talk about the fact that Iowa had the worst offense in the country? Do I talk about the fact that Iowa had 30 less yards per game than second to last? Do I talk about how the only 3 teams that had less passing yards than Iowa were the military schools, who, by the way, had twice as many rushing yards and were much better offenses than Iowa? Do I talk about the fact they somehow managed to turn it over 22 times? Do I talk about the fact that their backup quarterback might have been the worst player I've ever seen play college football? I used to be a pity fan of Iowa, like just out of sympathy. I'm like, oh man, they're so bad. Let me just support them and hope they win. But now Iowa's like that bum on the side of the road that you walk by and you just spit at, hunk a loogie at them because it's insulting. I feel ashamed every time I see Iowa. Every time I see Iowa take the field, and they have such a good defense, bro. Year in and year out, they're a top 10 defense, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because they have this offense attached at the hip to them. What do I even say? What do I say? What do I say about Iowa, bro? It's like it's a joke, bro. How can you put the worst offense in the country as a top 25 team? I don't care if they had Michigan's defense. It just they're not good enough, bro. It's a joke. And this is the thing, bro. Whenever people talk about Iowa, 95% of the conversation surrounding Iowa, whenever they get brought up, is either just a joke laughing at them or like negative, like they should fire their coach, they should fire their offensive coordinator. It's like there's no positives of Iowa. It's all negative. It's all jokes. It's all embarrassment. How are they a top 25 team, bro? And by the way, they also believe in the philosophy of no transfers, pretty much. So it's like they have no guys to the transfer portal this year, bro. I'm looking at this shit in disgust right now. I'm just looking like the offense is terrible, sucks. It's so bad, bro. How the fuck would you? I'd rather go to a D2 school than play wide receiver at Iowa. All these guys ought to be ashamed of themselves. They're like, you know what? We'll play in the Big Ten. We'll make some NIL money. Anybody that goes to play wide receiver at fucking Iowa kills their chances of playing in the NFL. You should be ashamed of yourself playing wide receiver at Iowa. Quarterback sucks. I mean, it's Cade McNamara. Took a team to the playoff, by the way. That's how low the standard is at Michigan to play quarterback. Cade McNamara took them to the playoffs. That's how easy it is to play quarterback at Michigan, by the way. But yeah, they suck. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Iowa fucking sucks. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at this shit. If you can't tell, by the way, Iowa went scoreless their last 2 games of the year. They didn't score the last 8 quarters they played. Um, Here's the interesting thing, right? Iowa played 3 teams last year who were consistently ranked throughout the year, widely considered to be top 25 teams. They played Penn State, Michigan, and Tennessee. The combined score of those 3 games was 0 to 92. I'll say it again for you 0 to 92 in 12 quarters, 6 halves, dozens of drives. Iowa couldn't even get in field goal range. Now, I'll admit, those were all pretty good defenses last year. But, brother, you can't score in 3 games. But they're a top 25 team. They're a top 25 team. This is a top 25 team right here, guys. It's a fucking joke. I don't even want to talk about Iowa anymore. It's going to make me upset. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. I will see you all in the next one. Peace.